Welcome to Pieces for My Puzzle. I'm your host, Nikki Ship, and I'm excited to be sharing with you my life with a son on the spectrum. This podcast is for anyone who is looking for quick tips and perspective, but most of all, for hope and inspiration. So sit back, relax, and let's put the pieces together. Hello and welcome back to another episode of Pieces for My Puzzle. I'm your host, Nikki Ship. Thank you so much for joining us today. Last week, we got the great honor to speak with Jay Silverman, and this week we are actually going to continue our talk with him. If you aren't familiar with Jay, he's an acclaimed director, producer, and photographer with over 40 years of experience in film, television, digital, and print. His latest drama, Camera, starring Beau Bridges and Jessica Parker Kennedy, was recently released on Amazon and iTunes. Once again, Jay Silverman, thank you so much for being here today.
It's my pleasure. I'm excited to be invited back.
Well, I wanted to continue our talk because in the last episode we were really delving into the emotional depth, and I kind of wanted to continue that talk today. For those of you that have not seen the film Camera, please watch the film. I am telling you from the mother of a special needs child, this applies to so many different kids, not just in the autism community, but anybody that has a special need. This movie will touch your heart, and I highly recommend that you watch the film. In the last episode, you had kind of mentioned mentors, and we talk about mentors a lot in the autism community. Eric, the character Eric, who was played by Beau Bridges, kind of becomes this unlikely mentor to Oscar. And I know we kind of talked about how they naturally, how Miguel Gabriel, who plays Oscar, has already had some struggles in his own personal life with his voice and speech impairment. But how did you approach the development of their friendship? Because I loved how their friendship developed in the movie. And what do you think it is that made their relationship so special?
It's a great question, and I think that I'll dive into just this subject matter real quickly. When Beau Bridges was introduced by me to young Miguel, who plays the 9-year-old character of Oscar, I think every filmmaker that makes movies with ensembles really, has to be incredibly focused on chemistry. And the chemistry that the two characters have, that would be Beau's character, Eric, and Oscar, started in the most unusual way, because we were on a Zoom call and the screen was split in three, and I said, Beau, I'd like you to meet Miguel. Miguel's playing Oscar. And he says, wow, good to see you. And then he does something which, since we're not on camera, he pulls out a little red stone that's polished. And he says, Miguel, I picked this up at one of the best mineral stores here in Hawaii, and I can't wait to give it to you in person. And Miguel's eyes open up, and he goes, let me tell you, this is called a jasper stone, red jasper stone. And just coincidentally, for your audience's viewing pleasure, the character in the movie, which is a town called Jasper, is fictitious. Right. Is fictitious. So here he is giving me a real rock called red jasper.
Oh my gosh!
And it's just, you can call it a coincidence, which it is, or you can call it just simply magic. So he says, I'm going to give this to you, Miguel, and I want you to know that it has special powers. Well, all your audience has to do is Google jasper stones, and they have lots of powers, mineral powers, powers to make you strong, and all the things that young children would be inspired by, specifically in relationship to bigger than life.
Wow.
And he gives the stone to Miguel, and he talks about how he's got grandchildren that are the same age, and I think before you know it, you recognize why Beau Bridges has had a a 60-year career.
Yeah.
I mean, here's a man that never once during the filming of this movie did I ever hesitate. It was always purely from the heart. And
Right.
Miguel and him, struck up a relationship. And most good movies that deal with subject matter that is heavy or sensitive always
Hmm.
have what they call, a born family.
Right.
And we became a family for the 2 months that we were all together.
So the connection, it sounds like, was just instantaneous. Like you knew right away this was going to be the perfect fit.
It was, something that, and you'll appreciate this as a mother. Um, as a filmmaker, I get on these podcasts that talk to filmmakers, and
Hmm.
they say, "What's the biggest lesson you learned?" So, and I said, "Here's the biggest lesson." I said, "Take this to the bank." I said, "When you cast a child that is virtually in every scene in your movie,
Hmm.
there's one thing you must never, never do, and that is avoid meeting the parents." I said, "Casting the parents is more important than casting the child."
Hmm.
Now, you being a mother of a child with special needs would have to know that
Yeah.
you're not going to walk into a doctor's office and not speak. You're going to be the voice.
Right. Right.
And in Miguel's case, his mother, Michelle, was super instrumental in making Miguel able to, to do the greatness that he did, not
Wow.
just with confidence, but with love
Right.
and passion. So,
Yeah.
and so I guess what I'm saying is you have to cast the parents.
Yeah. You gotta vet them too. Yeah.
No, because I'm sure you know as well as I do, because we've both experienced, there are a lot of parents with children with special needs that need uh, to be cared for themselves.
Right.
In
Well,
a
and they
way, you know.
yeah, and they integrate. Our care team integrates with our family. So those relationships that get formed, right? It's like you
Right.
do. Like a lot of times it's not just Drayson feeling them out to see if it's a good match for him. It's also seeing if it's a good match for our home and for
Yep.
us as a family because that is going to directly affect him and me and my husband and his brother and so it's kind of one of those things where it's all encompassing. You don't think of it at first. I definitely, when I first had to delve into Drayson's therapies, that's not something I thought about. But as soon as people start, coming into your home, it's very intrusive, and you're like, this can't just be for his integration. It has to be for the whole family. So you have to
Yeah.
find that fit. So it makes perfect sense what you're saying. And I know in the last episode you had mentioned some of the reactions and stories, but have there been any particular reactions or stories from viewers that have really stood out to you since the film's release? I know you mentioned the group of older ladies that came to see the film at the premiere about 3 weeks ago, but overall, has there been any other reactions or stories that have just really stood out to you since the film has been released?
Well, what resonates? We did something, and I know it's biased, but we had a screening in Morro Bay where the movie actually was set, even though we
Okay.
only shot there for 3 days. And we had a turnout of almost 2,000 people, which is
Wow.
extraordinary.
Right.
And the biased angle was the fact that they all wanted to see their city in a movie.
Right. Yeah.
Because you know where Morro Bay is. Morro Bay is by Hertz Castle in Northern California,
Okay.
and it's a little fishing village that's got a rock, and it's got a lot of charm. But the truth of it is, and this seems to be prevailing reality in every fishing village, they're all challenged. The towns are all fighting developers. This is across the
Hmm.
board. I went to
Hmm.
Maine. I went to Nova Scotia. I went to Ireland. Small towns are really casualties of war
Hmm.
because they're left out. The
Hmm.
funding never is enough for them. And when these people came to my screening, um, I stood at the door as they exited, and the predominant message that I got from them was there should be more movies like this. And
Wow.
that, as a filmmaker, was a big reward, because obviously, I'm not sitting here with a huge ego going, "Well, I did it." No, I'm
Right.
I'm fascinated by that because, to be blunt with you, it's hard to the content, even though it's a reservoir of content that's available for people to watch. Stories that emote
Mm-hmm.
a level of energy like you're feeling after you watch this movie aren't as prevalent as they used to be.
No, they're
And
not.
when I was younger, I fell in love with a movie called Cinema Paradiso. That's probably a movie you've never seen, but it's a similar story to my story in the way that a young little kid becomes enchanted by a projectionist in
Mm-hmm.
Italy. That's an old man that's close to the end of his life, and he becomes his mentor. And I grew up in a world, where apprenticeships were everybody wanted an apprenticeship. Now they don't even know what that word
They don't
means,
even know what it means. Yeah, I was just gonna say. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, but the way people were walking out and the stories they were telling, especially the women, we're talking about women between 40 and 70 would
Mm-hmm.
come to me and say, I think I'm going to join a support group.
Mm-hmm.
Because here's the thing: I'm in my late 60s. I wake up in the morning. All I want to do is give back. That's all I want to do. I've had a
Mm-hmm.
very healthy, successful career. This movie was made from the heart. I know deep inside it's entertaining, but
Mm-hmm.
the fact that it's got messages that are affecting you in a
Mm-hmm.
way that wasn't really my intention is
Mm-hmm.
glorious, you know.
Yeah.
But to hear these people walk out of the theater and go, you know what? Um, and I'll just give you my impression. My impression is you never know who's sitting next to you. Okay,
Yeah.
you go to the Department of Motor Vehicles and you see 10 people. One of them could have been an award-winning novelist. Another one could have invented the
Mm-hmm.
staple. You don't know, okay,
Right.
unless you're an extrovert. And I'm a little bit of an extrovert nowadays, so I ask these people, and it's absolutely resonating to hear them talk about themselves and what they do each day, which is nothing, and they're
Right.
saying, I want to now give back, you see,
Yeah.
and you've inspired me to do that
Yeah. Yeah.
because they're sitting watching TV all day. They're not
Right.
being utilized.
Right. Well, and the movie for me, in terms of giving back for me, was just to revisit how I am conveying that love and connection with my son and with my family and with my community, right? And I think that that's what was so profound because yes, your viewers were right. Like it, I wish there were more movies like this because I think we've lost sight of invoking those values and those feelings towards each other, and showing that way of connection, and like we said, we get lost in the daily grind of things. But I will say that since, Drayson was diagnosed at the age of 3 and he's 12 now, and the biggest lesson I've learned from him is to stop and take a step back and to remember that the connection is the most important thing. That the way I'm conveying my love and connection to my friends and my family is so important. And I felt like this movie really hit that with me big time. And,
Let, let me share
big
this
time.
quick story. Let me share this quick story with you. Um, my sweetheart has a nephew who is 6, and he does not have a father. And he was at the screening, the first screening we had, and he was crying through the
Mm-hmm.
screening. And we
Mm-hmm.
went to him and we said to him, "Are you okay?" And he goes, "Oh yeah, I'm fine."
Mm-hmm.
And he said, But why were you crying?" He goes, "Well, that's my dad on the screen,
Mm-hmm.
and my dad is my grandpa."
Mm-hmm.
And he articulates that grandpa teaches me everything I know.
Yeah.
And I guess the point, he saw a lot of himself in his life because
Mm-hmm.
he didn't learn how to cut a lawn on his own. He learned to cut a lawn with his grandpa. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? He
Mm-hmm.
didn't learn how to cut a piece of wood, he learned that with his grandpa. So I guess the point I'm trying to bring out is yet again, an inspirational moment. So I
Mm-hmm.
say, so what do you think of the movie? It's the best movie I've ever seen. 6 years old, okay. And I said,
Such a sweetheart.
so I look at him and I said, what do you think now? He goes, well, I'm going to deal with those bullies at school now. And and I said, well, what do you mean you're going to deal with them? I'm going to tell them we got to work together, not
Mm-hmm.
fight each other.
Mm-hmm.
And then
Yeah.
then two
Yeah.
weeks later, we found out that he saved another kid from being bullied, and they gave him an award at school.
Oh, that's so sweet.
Now,
Sweet
who
boy.
who could have ever imagined that, right?
Right.
So
Yeah. No, and I think when you do show those acts of love and kindness, it is profound. Drayson, when he was in first grade, we were really fortunate to have a teacher in his life that really, at the time, he was in public school, so he was integrated with atypical versus neurotypical kids. And I remember they had taken this field trip to the zoo. Well, Drayson at the time was terrified of birds. And they took him on this field trip, and later on that day, the teacher comes out, I go to pick up Drayson, and I'm thinking, oh God, what did he do now? Because I'm waiting to hear the bad report, or I'm waiting to hear. And she said, I have to tell you something today at the field trip. Drayson wouldn't sit down at the table with the rest of the kids because he was scared of the pigeons that were around all the food. And one of the other little girls, who was a very good friend to him, and I just love and adore this little girl, her name's Natalia, she got up, and a few of the other kids got up, and they shooed the birds away so that Drayson could come and sit at the table. And it was something as simple as that, to create that inclusiveness for him to be okay to sit at the table. Such a simple act, and I didn't even know what to say to her. I just said, I'm so proud of all of them. Thank you so much for telling me that story. And I thought, what a great thing for Drayson too, because he probably felt like he had to struggle with that on his own. And they just went and shoot the birds away so he could sit down and have lunch.
See, that's a wonderful story about empathy.
Yes.
And even children that don't have challenges,
yes,
that's a
yes.
lesson.
Yes. And she was so good at really, trying to integrate him. I identified a lot with the mom, with Oscar's mom in the movie, because there's one line in the movie where she says, the world, something to the effect of that the world can be really cruel to those that are quiet and kind. And I remember saying that to when we were interviewing other schools to transfer Drayson into, because we ended up having quite a few problems. I will never forget this, but she asked me one question that no other director had ever asked me. And we had interviewed in multiple schools, and we found out that, Drayson just wasn't the right fit for some of these other schools. And she said, what would you like me to know about Drayson? And I was so taken aback by that question, because no one had ever bothered to ask me. And
unbelievable.
Yeah. And I had realized, and I was already feeling defeated. It was always so daunting, because not only was I navigating getting him out of a public school system and putting him in a school especially for autism, but I had realized in that system itself that there was also, he didn't fit the mold into certain schools. So we had already been rejected multiple times trying to get him into a school. And she said, what would you like me to know about Drayson? And I remember I got super emotional. And what I said to her was, and I'm trying not to get emotional now. I said to her, Drayson is a very sweet and kind boy who was poorly misunderstood. And I felt that way when Oscar's mom says that the world can be cruel to those that are quiet and kind, because that's how I have always viewed Drayson. He is this sweet, wonderful, kind boy, and he's so smart, but he's just so unbelievably misunderstood at the time. And I knew that this was going to be the school he was going to end up in, because she asked me that question, because she took the time to ask me that question. And
that's profound.
Yeah. And I look back on that moment and I wonder, what would it be like if we all asked that question about somebody maybe we're trying to learn about? What's the one thing, you would like me to understand about that person?
I'll share a story with you that is directly related to this. I got this magnificent job when I was still shooting commercials with Ray Charles, the famous singer.
Mm-hmm.
And he's a legend. You know who Ray Charles is.
Oh, yes,
and,
absolutely.
he comes to the studio, And I'm bidding this job, but I got the job because of circumstances that were pretty traditional. But when Ray came in, we walked down the hall, and he was knocking on the walls, and he determines the footage of the room based on the echo. And as he turned the
Hmm.
corner to get into the stage, he knocked, and he felt the air conditioning, and then he paused. And nobody told me to do this. I just instinctively did it. I grabbed his arm and I said, Ray, let me tell you what's in front of you right now. Over to your left is a 40-piece orchestra. I said, over to your right is blue sky and clouds and an entire set with photographs of your face times 40. And he pauses and he looks and he grabs my other arm and he says, I've been doing this for 65 years and nobody has
Has
ever
ever.
described what I might see if I could see.
Oh my
And if you
gosh.
think about that, and it took such a little amount of my energy to do that, and
Right.
it wasn't like somebody told me to do it. It's just instinctively I felt, I wonder, so he explains to me. He says, here's what it's like every day for me. I go to play at Madison Square Gardens. My my valet puts me next to the curtain and then walks me to the X in front of the piano. I sit down and I perform, and then he takes me away. I have no idea where the spotlight is. I have no idea what the color of the sky is. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And
Right.
this relates to your child and my child because mechanically speaking, it's such a small effort
It's
on
so
my behalf
minute.
to
Yeah.
have done that. Yeah, and that's what happened with you. Is this
Right.
person gave you the liberty of something that you have probably your entire relationship in since your son's birth has been. But I got to tell you, let me explain something to you. Right? Nobody
Right.
ever said to you, "Please tell us."
You're right. No, no, I was so taken aback by it. I didn't, and like I said, I instantly got emotional because I didn't even, I wasn't even sure how to respond. No one had ever asked me that. But I remember in that moment because we had already been rejected, I think at like 4 or 5 other schools at that point. And I was like, I just want someone to understand my son, and to see him, to truly see him. And, and I was just so taken aback by that. But I knew, I remember getting off that call going, oh gosh, please let us get this. I really want him to go here. And,
Yeah.
but I knew he would most likely end up there. Deep down, I felt it and I knew it. So, and I think that that's what the movie Camera kind of brought out for me too, when she says that to Oscar. And that was one of the moments with the tissue box where I grabbed the multiple tissues because it just hit me in such a way, because I think every parent feels that way. I think for our children, we want other people to see the greatness that they bring. I told Drayson when he was born, the first thing I ever said to him before I realized he had autism was that he was meant for greatness. And I think that that's such an important thing, is that and even in daily life, not just children, but in human beings, sometimes we neglect to take a step back to see the greatness in each other. And but boy, did she strike a chord with me when that happened. So, what do you hope that your viewers, especially families and members of the autism and special needs communities, take away from this film? I know we've talked about all these emotional aspects, but is there any final advice or message that you would like to share with friends and family or parents?
Well, I mean, I think as a parent of a challenged child or challenging childs, I would say that community, is is something that we all want to support. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and I commend you, Nikki, for having this podcast because, I mean, to be a parent, to wake up in my case with a child over 3 months early, less than 2 pounds, with
Right.
all the challenges that you have. There's not really a system that you
No.
could put, put into play that
Right.
somebody's going to come up to you like yourself and say, been through it. I want to give you some tools here. Okay.
Right.
Doesn't exist. It may
Hmm.
exist now way more than it did when I did it 27 years ago. But when I look at you and I see these stories coming through and resonating,
Hmm.
they resonate because they're authentic.
Hmm.
And I tried to make a movie that was authentic,
Hmm.
even to the point when the mentor gets pissed off at Oscar and basically says, "Go find another friend."
Yes,
And
I know.
you know, I mean, that happens in real life, and that happened to me in real life. And
Yeah.
it was important for me to put in the movie because uh, it is not going to be like walking on clouds. It's
Right.
going to have, shuffles and bumps and scary, scary, scary business. But
Yeah.
community to me is in part, as a filmmaker, what I tried to do in making this movie, because I feel an incredible amount of empathy when I
Hmm.
see a film that's not teaching, not preaching, but a film that actually kind of taps a part of my emotional system in a
Right.
way that makes me actually think and actually go, wow. Because your point about the brilliance of your child,
Hmm.
the things that he feels and sees that most people won't know unless you uh, support that
Hmm.
knowledge, is the magic that will get you through the day. You know what I'm
Right.
saying?
Oh, yeah.
It is, and that's what filmmakers want to do. They want you to be able to uh, escape all the stuff that's going on today in the news and the hardships we all have, and just kind of like take a deep breath. And I'm so grateful that people are accepting the film as what it is, which is entertaining kind of adventure, where I think uh, the message that I'm getting is everybody is incredibly inspired by it, and whether
Yes.
you have a child that is challenged, or you have a parent that's challenged, I mean,
Yeah.
my goodness, uh, we're all in this together.
Yeah, I felt like there were so many aspects that everyone could relate to in the film, honestly. I think that we've all had our trials and tribulations, and I think that it's very easy. This film was very easy to identify with, and I think finding your community, finding that sense. I think what I loved the most was how disjointed in the beginning of the film, the community sense really felt. But then by the end of the film, how, you know, everyone really did come together as a community, and to see how everyone was starting to come together and to be with each other was I think such a wonderful moment in the film, and it warmed my heart, and I was happy for Oscar. Like I said, I couldn't wait to see what was going to happen to this little boy. Like, I just wanted to know more, and I just kept thinking, what's going to happen next, and but I love how that all of that disconnect eventually, with love and kindness, and formulated that connection to bring that community together. And I thought that was such a wonderful message from the film itself
thank
too. So
thank
absolutely.
you so much.
So what's next for you? Are there any new projects on the horizon that you'd like to share with our listeners
Sure.
today?
Yeah, I mean, all I do is, my business model is to give back, and we're working on a true story movie called Yale that is, hopefully we'll be shooting next year, and it's a project about a woman like yourself who's in her late 30s, and she wakes up in the morning and discovers her child, who happens to be 12 years old, is struggling, and they realize that he needs an organ, and the only uh, way that that organ transplant is going to be provided is she will have to do the unthinkable, and that is reconnect with her father that vanished when she was 9.
Oh boy.
So she hadn't seen her father in 30 years. the story is, not only a true story, but it really kind of encompasses this idea of how we all interrelate, and some are positive and some are negative, and
Hmm.
it's just a wonderful film, and I'm going to dedicate it to organ transplants,
That's
because
amazing.
it does to me alert all of us, no
Hmm.
different than you hearing what you heard from that woman,
Hmm.
and finding yourself floored. To me, your audience can simply turn their driver's license over and sign on the back and donate their organs upon death. Uh,
Hmm.
a lot of people wouldn't do it. I would do it in a second.
Hmm.
What good's my body if I'm gone? But
Right?
if you can
Yeah.
save another life, that's pretty extraordinary. So that motivates me. Plus the post traumatic stress aspect, because here I don't even know you, but I bet you $1 million, your husband and yourself and your family, uh, PTSD is probably in your
Hmm.
vernacular. Why? Because it's just life. We
Yep.
all have to cope,
Yep.
and to watch a movie about a woman who actually discovers her, what really truly has created the stress in her life and how to move forward is to me something worthwhile, and that's why that's going to be my next movie.
Oh, that's exciting. Well, I look forward. I know it's a ways out, but I will definitely keep my eye out for it. I look forward to seeing
Okay.
it. Um, Jay, thank you so much for joining us today. For our listeners that want to learn more about camera or Jay Silverman Productions, you can go to jsilvermanproductions.com/camera if you'd like to watch the trailer on the movie, and see where you can also pick up to watch that movie on Amazon or iTunes. Thank you again, Jay, for being here. I truly appreciate having you on the show today, and I thank you so much for this beautiful film. Thank you so much.
You made my day, and again, I don't say this, Nikki, for any other reason, but what you're doing is way more important than what I'm doing, and that
Thank you.
is passing around the love, because
Thank you.
I wish I had somebody like you to have heard when I was going through 27 years ago what the challenges that, and I'm still going through it, but
Right.
thank you for what you're doing.
Absolutely. Thank you. I wouldn't have it any other way. Honestly, I wouldn't trade it for anything. I do it because it's my passion project, and I want people to feel inspired. I want parents to know that there's a community out there to support them and love on them and to help their children as well. So thank you so much for that. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. And by the
The,
way, you might actually induce somebody like your person that you keep mentioning that affected you to to do exactly what that person did for somebody else. That's
yes.
what excites me,
Yes.
because it doesn't take
Absolutely.
much. Or like what I did with Ray Charles, because to me, sometimes you need to be ignited to see
Right.
another point of view.
Yeah. And it
Thank
took all of 5 seconds, literally, like 5 seconds. And
Exactly.
then, and what I learned there was invaluable. So I absolutely 100% agree. Thanks again, Jay. I really appreciate it.
My
This can
pleasure. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you. This concludes our episode for today. If you have questions, comments, or even a show topic that you'd like to hear about, please feel free to send me an email at info@piecesformypuzzle.com. I'd love to hear from you. Don't forget to like and follow us on Facebook and Instagram if you haven't already, or subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you like what you're hearing, please spread the word to others so we can help our community. And feel free to give us a good rating on your preferred podcast platform of choice. Once again, thanks for tuning in. And until next time, keep working on your puzzle. And remember, you don't have to have it all solved in a day. Take care.